Hi, sorry for the bandana. You know, it makes me think about my roots as a Zapatista, an anarchist. But now it's because of the virus that we're all facing. As our society endures the trials of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is story after story of caring and sacrifice, of love and understanding that helps us move through our days of stay-at-home policies throughout most of the nation. Care providers across the country have gone beyond the call of duty time and time again, and almost certainly will continue. We can all be grateful that this generosity and commitment to others has truly shone through in this time of community crisis and need. While acts of kindness and generosity of all kinds have blossomed, unfortunately, other more unwelcome behaviors have too. Based on calls to local help programs, it's clear that domestic violence incidents are spiking. We know that when an abusive partner feels a loss of power and control, they are more likely to strike out where they can. We saw a spike in domestic violence in response to the 2008-2009 economic downturn. We also saw one right after the 9/11 attack. China has reported a threefold increase in incidents earlier this year in the Wuhan area during their epidemic. While we look at this as a real concern, we must face the greater issue, however. While some women also abuse, over 90% of violent assaults are committed by men. Certainly each man must be held accountable for his actions. In the meantime, we can't ignore the elephant in the living room, or the bedroom, or the kitchen. Why is there even a problem with domestic violence in the first place? Clearly, the root cause of at least a quarter of all women in relationships experiencing domestic violence and intimidation has to do with male training. Men are also responsible for well over 90% of all violent crimes in our society. Why? As a co-leader of a volunteer batterers program for over 20 years, I found one common denominator. It wasn't anger problems or communication problems. It wasn't growing up witnessing battering. It wasn't a short temper, and it wasn't being particularly abused themselves. Yes, any of these things might have been contributing factors for individual batterers, but the most common issue was a rigid attitude towards men and women's roles. We live in a society, like most in the world, that promotes certain roles for men and certain roles for women. Most boys are taught in countless ways from the day they are born that they must be tough, strong, and in control of themselves and those around them if they are to be considered a real man. According to gender research by Dr. Sandra Lipschitz-Bem and many others, not only are boys taught that they are better than girls, but many elementary school boys say they would rather die than live their life as a girl. So, many boys feel they must prove to their peers, often at practically any cost, that they are full members of the group called males. To be anything else is to be nothing. Whether it's going through the razzing on the playground, going through the initiations in the gang on the corner, or the fraternity at college, it is emotionally devastating to fail the test of masculinity. In survey after survey, we find that the most painful insults are the ones that label a boy or man as feminine. The most valued compliments are those that refer to his manliness. He's a real man. Researchers from Robert Brannon to Michael Kimmel have come to a similar conclusion. We insist that human males, when confronted by physical or emotional pain, take it like a man. Yes, our mass media and social media promote these distorted notions of manhood. But these notions were supported through most of our institutions long before the mass media or social media as we know it existed. Both school and professional sports too often support these distorted of manhood, a manhood that diminishes our humanity. However, these messages were being taught to boys and men long before professional football or even public schools existed. One might suggest that just because they've been here a long time doesn't mean we have to continue to live with them. We got rid of smallpox, didn't we? Some might argue that there was nowhere near the amount of violence in past generations. Actually, 2 or 3 generations ago, there was less access to deadly weapons, but there was just as much violence against male peers. Furthermore, violence at home was rampant. However, the beating of one's wife or children was considered private violence against male peers, was considered private violence, which shouldn't be interfered with because, after all, we were taught that a man's home is his castle. The general cultural norm was that a man had the right to discipline his wife if he thought it was necessary and he didn't make a public spectacle of it. We've moved a ways away from that norm, but boys are still getting the message that it's better to be dead than be a girl, and that they must do whatever is necessary to remain a member of the male club. It's about time we lift the veil of denial and lead that elephant out of our house. We must teach a new masculinity, one that values women and supports nonviolent conflict resolution. We must teach a masculinity that allows boys to admit fear, to acknowledge hurt, to express their whole range of feelings, to have access to their full humanity. We owe it to our children and to our children's grandchildren. I'm River Smith, and a loving revolution is the answer.